And in fact, I had to do a miniature stop motion puppet of Pennywise that had to look, to work in that sequence.
What's up, y'all? Check it out. So, back in last year, we saw a massive success in Welcome to Derry, and it reaffirmed everybody's belief that Pennywise is an absolute legend. Well, we can't forget about the original Pennywise that really made us all scared of clowns, and who's also equally iconic. And here today, I'm here to speak with the man who is partially behind making him so iconic, the makeup artist behind the madness. Please welcome Mr. Bart Mixon.
Nixon, how are you doing?
Great. Good to be here. Nice to chat with you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you again for agreeing to do this interview from your very, very busy schedule. I know you have a lot to do, so it means a lot that you are willing to come through and just answer some questions for me.
You bet. I love talking about Pennywise.
This is good. It's good. One of your best work. Some of your best work. And
nice
so my first question is, recently you worked on the Michael biopic, actually, and stated that it will be one of your definite highlights of 2026. So what was your experience working on that project? And were you already a fan of the Thriller video or Michael Jackson?
Well, certainly I was both. I mean, I was familiar with Michael Jackson since, the early 70s, when he did the song for Ben for the Willard movie. That was a favorite of mine back when I was a kid. I've always been a Rick Baker fan, so he did the Thriller video for John Landis. He did the makeup effects for that. So that was another in terms of an interest. But with the Michael bio, a buddy of mine, Bill Corso, was the department head, and they're recreating the making of Thriller, the zombie dance sequence. We shot in the actual downtown location that John Landis shot the original in with Jackson back in 1980 or whenever that was, and so that was cool being on the same street, in the same location. At one point, we had a monitor up where they were running the original music video plus our camera feed, and it was almost identical, both the location and the various zombies that we had put together. So that was, I was only on it for 2 days. Again, my friend Bill Corso was in charge of it. He brought a bunch of us in because we were doing about 20 background dancing zombies. So it was kind of a who's who, V. Neal, Chris Nelson. I mean, there were Oscar winners there. It was Howard Berger. I mean, all kinds of people. So it was just a cool. It was originally going to be one night. It ended up being 2 nights. So I was not, even though I was kind of professional back when they did the original video, I hadn't moved to LA yet, so I wasn't able to be a part of that. So it was nice to kind of get a second chance at it, all these years later. Also worked on another scene in the movie, but I'm not allowed to talk about that. So
I see.
It may or may not make the final cut. I guess at one point it was going to be 2 movies, so I guess they got a lot of material there so I'm not sure what's going to be in the final release. So I don't want to say like, oh, I did whatever, and then it not be there. Plus, I don't want to give away any story points.
For sure. I know you're still under NDA until the movie comes out.
Yeah. The only reason I've posted anything that I have posted is because the trailer came out and it had a shot of, the Michael Jackson zombie, from Thriller. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's okay to talk about it, but I haven't even posted my zombie yet because, again, the NDAs. But it was, it was a good, like as a fan of the video and all that, it was good to revisit it.
I see. That's such an amazing thing about the world of special effects makeup, when you're friends with people who are in that world and they can just casually hit you up like, hey, I'm working on a biopic for the biggest star in the world. You want to come? Like that's such an amazing opportunity that you just don't get in other parts of the movie industry. That's just a specific special effects makeup thing.
It's very, I kind of reflecting back on stuff that I've worked on over the last, pretty much most of my career. It's typically been with a lot of either friends or people who quickly became friends. So it's always it's fun getting to do something that was basically a hobby anyway, and then getting to do it with your friends, and then getting paid for it on top of that. So it's like a win-win situation.
Absolutely. And say you're a Rick Baker fan, as am I. He's the reason he's actually one of my artistic inspirations. And fast forward later, it seems like you two are decent friends now.
Yeah, we first met in 1977 at a science fiction, horror convention in Houston. He gave me his contact info. I kept in touch. Yeah, once I finally moved out to California, I worked for him. Gorillas in the Mist, Gremlins 2, The Grinch, the Men in Black movies, the Ring movies. The first Hellboy movie was a Rick Baker show. I just helped him with his Halloween. He does like a Halloween show every year. I just helped him this year with that one. So yeah, he lives maybe 5 minutes from me. So yeah, it's nice that they say not to meet your idols, but I met mine, and he was a cool guy. So yeah, no,
That is
he's a good guy.
That's great, and I'm happy to hear it. Hopefully, I can interview him one day, and I will tell him that you absolutely love him, even though he already knows that, so doesn't need a
Sure, he doesn't mind
rant.
hearing it again.
My next question is actually also about one of your earlier projects, but one that you didn't mention. You helped develop the birth scene in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. So, what was like, along with other makeup artists, but what were some things that you told yourself, along with like some skills that you used to make that scene look as scary as possible?
Well, that again, I was working for a friend, Mark Shostrom, who I'd met a couple of years prior to that, and we'd done a number of films together. But I think Elm Street 2 was probably the last one that we collaborated on. So, I mean, it was a great experience. I got to, in addition to like my makeup movie skills, I did the storyboards for Mark for the sequence because it was scripted one way, and Mark didn't want to do it that way. He had his own ideas. So I got to use my illustrating skills. At one point, I wanted to be a comic book artist, so I got to kind of, call those into play. And so I did a set of boards illustrating, Mark's concept for the sequence, and then I did a second set based on the way it was described in the script. And then we went in and pitched both of them to the director, and I purposely drew mine to look better. Like the when I drew the Jesse character and the one based on the script, I made him look kind of goofy and put freckles or whatever on him. And then mine I drew bigger and I drew cooler. The sequence that Mark wanted to do. So we kind of purposely made our version look better. But it was there was Mark had his ideas. It was collaborative. The particularly the gag where Jesse's screaming and the Freddy's eye opens in the back of his throat. That was my idea. That wasn't in the script. That wasn't in
Oh,
anything that Mark had thought of. I just pitched it to him. I said, "Hey, this could be cool," and he's like, "Yeah, sounds good." So he was certainly receptive to ideas. You know, and a lot of stuff I've worked on. Depending on the boss in the show, you can pitch ideas, and sometimes they'll use them, sometimes they won't. Gremlins 2, that the lab scene where they're in the genetics lab, where they're like turning into the vegetable gremlin and the bat gremlin, and basically Joe Dante just came to Rick Baker's shop. There's about 75 of us working there, and he's like, it's going to be in a genetics lab. Anything can happen. And so we were just spitballing ideas for weeks, and most of the concepts, like the vegetable gremlin and I think the bat gremlin and the spider gremlin, I think a lot of that stuff came from guys in the shop pitching ideas. So sometimes you're lucky you're on a show where they welcome input. Other times it's a very specific, like when I came on to Hellboy 2, the makeup, or Hellboy rather, Matt Rose had already designed the makeup, and so that was more of a question of just me executing. I was doing the stunt double, so I was just had to match what they were doing on Ron. So sometimes you've got some very rigid parameters, and then other times it's very loose, and they invite, creativity. So yeah, just again, Men in Black 3 was another example where Rick Baker was going out to the crew and just saying like, hey, we're doing 1960s type aliens, so what ideas have you guys got? And then people were throwing ideas at him, so again, it works both ways. But so going back with the Elm Street, I mean, I was sculpting, I was helping Mark problem solve, designing effects or shots, specifically like the eye and the throat. So it was just a nice, again, collaborative effort. And on that one in particular, I was using virtually all my skills. I was, again, sculpting, mold making, doing some light mechanical work. There's Jesse's got a mechanical, like a long tongue that he's making out with his girlfriend, and it's wiggling around. I mechanized that. Like two or three other guys in the shop took a stab at it and couldn't come up with anything. Then I was like, oh, I think I got something that'll work. And then I came in the next day, and thankfully it did, because I kind of built it up. But I helped Mark apply stuff on that. So I was running foam latex, so that was a back then you kind of had to be a jack of all trades. The industry's gotten more departmentalized, where you can just be a mold maker, or just a sculptor, or just a hair technician, or like just an on-set application person. But yeah, particularly back in the 80s, you kind of had to do it all.
Artistic competition all for Freddy Krueger is a very interesting concept to me. But yeah, that's crazy. I because when I was watching the Nightmare movies, which I'm a very big fan of,
Sure.
that scene of Freddy's eye peeking out the back of Jesse's mouth was always something that stood out to me as something that just goes with the surreal nature of that film. So it's very interesting to know that you were the person behind that.
Well,
And
I'm
one
glad
of,
to.
in my opinion, is one of the scariest parts of the whole franchise, or one of the
I,
scariest visuals.
Thank you. Yeah, I did think it was just kind of a unique visual. The film Insidious 3 ripped me off. They did the same thing, digitally a couple of years ago. But I guess it's the old, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But again, I like what I did like about the Elm Street series conceptually is because it was all dream based. You had no limitations. There didn't have to be a logic like, well, how could Freddy get his head up in the back of this girl's neck? It's like, or not girl, in the back of Jesse's neck. It's like it doesn't matter. It's just if it looks cool, if it's a disturbing image, if it's if it's a an interesting visual, let's go for it. And yeah, so we I thought we came up with some cool stuff for that.
Absolutely. So,
And I'm glad to meet another fan.
of course. So there are many people to this day that say that Pennywise is the reason why they're scared of clowns. And I just wanted to know, how does it feel knowing that you're one of the biggest reasons for many people's phobia of clowns?
Well, like a friend of mine had a saying on his business card, sorry kid, just doing my job. So I mean, it's certainly very flattering. It's great. I mean, that was 1990, so what's that, 35 years ago? And I'm seeing more Tim Curry themed Pennywise stuff in the last, decade than I did the first 2 decades that it was out. And I think part of that was kind of a rights issue. I think the rights were kind of muddied back in the early 2000s. I always wish Todd McFarlane had done a movie Maniac series, based on, of action figures based on the It characters. But I think the rights were all, messed up. But then Warner Brothers finally ended up with them in the mid, 20 teens, and then that's how they were able to do the remake in 2017, which while they redesigned Pennywise, it shed light on my Pennywise. So
Absolutely.
I think mine has had a resurgence in popularity, due in large part to just the new It, and then now Welcome to Derry, bringing him back into the public, conscious. And it's great to have one. I mean, it's a lot. I've applied a lot of cool makeups, like RoboCop or The Grinch or Hellboy, but those were designs. by other artists, and that I was
Right.
executing, their design. Pennywise, I worked with the director and I worked with Tim Curry, but I developed all the conceptual work myself. I did all the initial line, drawings. That was before Photoshop, so I couldn't do anything digitally, but I generated all the artwork. I got input from the director. I did a couple of test sculptures that he then picked the one he liked, that we developed into the final makeup. I and a Canadian assistant did a couple of makeup tests where we worked with Tim in terms of the coloration and whatnot. So it was very collaborative. I mean, it is commercial art, so you are rarely anybody just say, "Here's a pile of money, do whatever you want." So I had to make Lee Wallace, the director, happy. Had to make Tim Curry happy. I had to make myself happy. So um, so again, it was a collaboration. But no, I think it's great that people are still talking about it. And I've worked on shows like in Mexico or Europe, where when people find out, like, oh Jesus, you did, Tim Curry's Pennywise, just that it's, he's known worldwide. So it's very flattering, very humbling. I love it. And no, yeah, again, it's nice to have one. It's cool that I got, people do these great T-shirts. This is cool graphics based on my concepts, particularly the battery acid look, which that
Which
was
is
totally my sculpture. So it's just great to see that out there in action
that
figure
was that was
shirt.
such a haunting prosthetic as well when I first watched that movie.
Cool,
So
and it almost didn't make it in the movie. We
really,
Yeah, we shot the scene in Vancouver, and the turnaround time to put him, because we started the day in him as the regular Pennywise, and then they didn't want to shut down for a couple hours that it would take to put the other prosthetics on him. So we shot the whole scene with just the regular Pennywise look, and they were prepared to go with that route. And in fact, I had to do a miniature stop motion puppet of Pennywise that had to look, to work in that sequence. So we sculpted it with the normal look because at that time we didn't think we were going to get to use my prosthetics. But I had them in my makeup room, and Tim Curry had seen them, and he was very complimentary, very flattering, things to say about them. And he thought it was a shame that they weren't going to be used. So I don't know if the production brought it up to him or if he offered it up, but he basically told them if they could shoot those scenes in a day, that he would come back and wear the makeup to get it with that makeup. So it's 100% owe it to Tim for it even being in the movie, because he easily could have just said, you know what, uh, I don't want to wear that much rubber, and I don't feel like doing it. And they were completely prepared to go with the normal look. And I think it would have really lessened the impact of that scene to have not had the transition with him into this, battery, what's become known as the battery acid look. But we shot those on an insert stage in Burbank, 3 or 4 months later. That whole sequence of him uncovering, his face and you seeing all the slime and the hole getting popped in his head and all that. So that was all done in post. And again, if Tim hadn't agreed to do it, it wouldn't be in the movie. So I wouldn't be wearing this shirt.
that's amazing. That is amazing. God bless Tim Curry.
Oh, definitely. He was a great guy anyway. You couldn't have asked for a better collaborative partner in a character makeup like that. And then to have somebody of his caliber bring something to life that I designed is just, incredible. So yeah, nothing but great things to say about Tim.
Awesome. So I only have about 10 minutes left before this Zoom meeting ends, so I will ask about two more questions and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
So, when looking at Bill Skarsgård's makeup, the new adaptation of Pennywise, because I know we both see both of these versions of Pennywise everywhere, and both versions still scare people and are able to stand on their own as horror icons. But when you look at Bill Skarsgård's makeup, does it make you wish you could have done anything different with your version of Pennywise? And if so,
Um,
what would that be?
right. Maybe a little bit. I mean, I think it's a good makeup. I've gotten to apply it a couple of times. I did it both for a promotional piece on Skarsgård when the first movie came out. But they did like a virtual reality promo thing that me and a friend of mine, Chris Nelson, applied it. My main problem with it, in terms of it servicing the story, is that it is disguising himself as a clown to lure children in. And the Skarsgård one looks so creepy just from the word go. Why would a kid go anywhere near that thing?
That's
Um,
always what I've said. I'm not going anywhere near him if he tries to offer me a balloon. I'm running as far as I can.
right. And with Tim Curry, it was more actor driven. Tim could look very harmless and comical and innocent, and then just with his facial expressions, just turn it into something creepy and disturbing. Now, having said that, my original pitch for the Pennywise makeup was that when the adults would come back and see Pennywise, at that point in the story, they know that he's not a clown. They know he's a monster disguised as a clown. So I wanted that Pennywise to look more horrific, more like the battery acid look, because at that point, Pennywise was just screwing with him because he knows that they're on to him. So I wanted that one to be more horrific, which would be more like the Skarsgård. So yeah, a part of me wanted to do something. I mean, again, it would have been like this battery acid, but just all over, kind of like a skeletal corpse of a clown, like the eye sockets would. Anyway, I would have just echoed the clown elements into the horrific version. So, I mean, I was kind of thinking along those lines, but you definitely need the harmless, innocent looking one story wise for him to lure the children in. So, I'm very happy with what we ended up with, with Tim, and I think for our story, it was the right approach.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why I prefer your Pennywise in comparison to Skarsgård. While I think both are great, it's the fact that the newer version kind of just looked like the more run-of-the-mill horror clown, whereas your version of Pennywise is able to be scary while being just a clown, and not a lot of people are able to do that.
Right. I mean, I had people going like, "Oh, you ought to paint his mouth so it looks like dripping blood or whatever." It's like, no, no, no. It's got to look like a harmless, friendly clown. Now, I do like the buck teeth they put on Skarsgård. That's in my mind, that's a obvious homage to Stephen King because he's kind of got the bunny teeth. So I wouldn't have minded doing that to Tim. But yeah, I mean, it works for what they're doing with it. I'm enjoying the Welcome to Derry series. I'm one episode behind. Don't tell me what happened last Sunday, but yeah, but it works. But no, I definitely I like what we did on Tim and to allow him to do the performance that he needed to do.
I will ask you one more question. Out of all of your creations that you've ever made throughout your career, which one would you feel the most comfortable with letting that babysit your kid?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, certainly not Pennywise because that's his. Probably, I mean, in terms of characters that I've gotten to work on, like the Kelsey Grammer Beast from X-Men 3, which I got to apply. I mean, Spectral Motion designed it, but me and a
Oh,
friend, Tom Flouts, applied it. And he was certainly a very, I think, just a very good character. He was a very, a good guy, just the way Kelsey played him. He was, so he would be someone I would be comfortable with. I mean, I got to work on the original RoboCop, and even though he might be a little stern, he's still he was still a good guy too. So, you
good
got those kinds.
intentions.
Because I mean, a lot of the stuff I do are, I mean, obviously Freddy Krueger, I'm not going to let him anywhere near, and or Pennywise, they're a little rough on the old kids. So yeah, I'll go with the Beast, the Kelsey Grammer Beast, or Hellboy. He loves children, so But again,
Hellboy
those are
does love
makeups.
children.
Those are makeups that I've had the pleasure of applying, but they were designed by friends of mine. So they're not. That's what's for a large part kind of unique with Pennywise is that he was mine from start to finish. And that's rare that you get to do that, especially with a lot of what I do in the last 20 years was on set application for working for other artists, and so it's kind of like a design makeup that they say here, you're taking it to set, and so again, this one, Pennywise was my baby. So, but yeah, but Hellboy, the Beast, RoboCop, some of the good guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, the Beast was a great character, and that makeup was absolutely amazing.
Beautiful makeup. I mean, I love the digital version they had in the Marvels. You can still see Kelsey in it, but I am biased. I think our makeup was pretty much perfect. Spectral did an amazing job, building it, and then Tom and I are a great team application-wise. And yeah, I just thought it was he really nailed the character. It was perfect casting. Just again the right amalgam of actor and makeup, and just the whole package.
So we actually do have about 10 more minutes in this
I,
Zoom call, luckily. So
as you can tell, I love to chat. So whatever you want to talk about.
that is great. I love it. Like I said, I love hearing your creative process as an artist, from a makeup artist to another. I love hearing you take so much pride in your work and just how much you appreciate your version of Pennywise, especially knowing that that's one of your characters that you got to just do conceptually from start to finish. And I know just how great that is to have something that comes directly from your mind and just be that beloved for all these years.
Right. Oh yeah. Again, it's a unique, wonderful feeling. I suggest everybody, if everybody can do it, it's great. But it even, again, like I sculpted him. I mean, I did the 2D designs. I did the 3D sculpture. I did the application. I did the painting. So yeah, it was pretty much mine from and again, I was working with the director and working with Tim, so it's always a collaborative art. But yeah, but no, it's very gratifying, very satisfying character, and to see that he's so beloved.
So the last question I'll ask you is this: what was, or what, I'm sorry, what is your fondest memory when it comes to what you did working on it in the 90s?
Well, that's a good question. I remember there was one day. I mean, this was the year 1990. Madonna's Vogue was in vogue. So we're listening to that in the trailer. You would put CDs on. We usually listen to the best of Tim Curry CD, but he had him or my assistant Joanne had put on the Madonna Vogue album. So seeing Tim in partial Pennywise prosthetics going through the Vogue mannerisms that Madonna had done in the video. That was a pretty humorous and unique experience. I wish we had video of that. I did shoot some behind the scenes video that's in this Pennywise documentary that Dead Mouse Productions put out. I think it's called Pennywise: The Story of It. It's full of my video and photos, but for whatever reason, I didn't think to actually videotape the makeup process. So there's like maybe 30 seconds of video in the trailer of Tim just kind of goofing around, but not doing the Vogue business. But so that's a memory that'll stick with me, hopefully the rest of my life. But that was pretty funny. And then just getting to meet Tim in general, he was a really cool guy. The kids on the show were really nice. Seth Green was, a little kid then, and he was a big monster fan. So anytime he saw me showing up in base camp, he knew that I had a new monster that day. So he would like come running over to the trailer to see, oh, let me see what the werewolf's going to look like, or let me see what. So that was cool, just seeing that level of enthusiasm, from the kids and stuff. Because I mean, when I was that age, I was into monster stuff too. So it was nice to see that they were, and then obviously to see where Seth Green is gone since then. He just took off with Austin Powers and Robot Chicken and all that business. So yeah. So yeah, but probably Vogue is probably my single fondest memory.
Have you and Seth Green talked since that production?
I bumped into him at a couple of conventions, and then when the Pennywise documentary was coming out, we did like a Zoom, you know, uh, interview thing where it was him and me and a handful of other people from the show. And I remember like I think when I signed in or he signed in, he's like, "Oh my God, Bart's here!" And I was like, geez, I didn't think he'd remember me, so that was kind of
Aw.
flattering. But, I mean, we all go our own way. So, we don't see anybody as much as you'd like to. I did see Tim Curry recently at a Monster Palooza, and so it was good to see him again. And actually, for whatever reason, he hadn't gotten a copy of the documentary, so I had
Wow,
a hand.
really?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, yeah, I'm not sure why, but anyway, thankfully the venue was close to my home, so I was able to have my wife run me up an extra, Blu-ray, and so I gave it to him. So, and a couple of years ago, I gave him a copy of his face cast from 1990. So he seemed very, touched to have gotten that. So yeah, I bump into him once in a while, but not as much as I'd like to.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, yeah. It is great to hear just how amazed he was by your work, Seth Green, that is, when he was a kid. Because yeah, I also know that feeling of being mesmerized by that world when you're a kid and you just see how some of your favorite monsters are done, or through makeup or through the behind the scenes. Because when it came to horror movies, I would always watch the behind the scenes of makeup and how they do it, just wanting
Right.
to do that one day.
Sure.
So the fact
Well,
that you
yeah,
were able to.
I think I definitely saw part of me in him because again, when I was his age and younger, I was devouring, the original King Kong is my all-time favorite movie, and The Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe is probably the first movie I remember seeing as a kid where I was aware of makeup transforming, an actor, in that case Tony Randall, into six or seven different characters, and just the power of, what you can do with, even the simplest prosthetics. Yeah, I think to a degree I was probably seeing again a little bit of me in him, and then for him to have gone on and done what he's done, and it's he's still obviously a fan of this kind of stuff. So that, yeah, that's very cool.
It is. Well, Bart, thank you so much for coming on here. I am so glad I got to speak to the mind behind one of my favorite horror monsters and one of my comfort characters. I am glad that my little nephew gets to meet the father. And
I may not have that one. That may be one of the few Pennywise figures I don't own. That looked pretty
it's
cool.
it's the Living Dead Dolls
Oh, okay.
series. Yeah, they did one of Tim Curry's Pennywise, which
Right.
isn't it's actually not too expensive. I think it's like $100 or something.
I'll have to take I think a buddy of mine has a Halloween store here in town, Halloween Town, and I think he might sell those there. So I'll have to go check that out.
Gotcha.
Well, cool. So yeah, let me know. Send me a link once this is edited and up, so I can see it.
I most definitely will.
And cool. I like it. I assume you did your makeup today.
I did, yes.
Nicely done. Nicely done. I like the little kind of half face. You see a little bit of you peeking through there.
Thank you.
So cool. All right. Well, good. Well, no, this was fun. Again, as you can tell, I always enjoy talking about Pennywise. I'm his proud papa. So yeah. Well, good luck with your other interviews, and yeah, I look forward to seeing this put together.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time. Take
You
care.
bet. My pleasure. See you later.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
And balloons, too. All colors.
Do they float?
Oh, yes. They float, Josie. They float. And when you're down here with me, you float too!